Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Peace's guest speaker series, specifically meeting the lawyer bencher candidates. As always, the views and opinions are of the candidates alone, don't reflect me, Justice and Peace's, Trask College, or any of the education institutions or organizations I'm affiliated with. And today we have Andrew joining us. And Andrew, perhaps, thanks, first of all, thanks for joining us, but perhaps maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name's Andrew Spurgeon. I'm a bencher, and I have been a bencher of the law study for 8 years now. This is my, if I'm successful, third term as a bencher. I've practiced. I was called in 1995, so I've been practicing for 28 years, mostly in the field of personal injury and quite a bit of medical malpractice work for plaintiffs. I'm at a firm in Hamilton called Ross McBride, and right now we're about 43, 44 lawyers in the firm. I used to be the chair or managing partner for quite a few years, which was an interesting experience, getting lawyers to all do things in the same direction at the same time and getting them to cooperate is a challenge. I've also been president of the Hamilton Law Association and a director of the Advocate Society, and I'm a recipient of the Ontario Trial Lawyers Association Distinguished Service Award. And currently, I'm also an adjunct professor at Western. I teach insurance law there. And actually, after we finish today, I have to prepare my lecture for tomorrow afternoon. I'm teaching the duty of liability insurance, the duty to defend, and duty to indemnify, and distinguishing between the two. So I'm going to spend the afternoon talking to my students about that. Personally, I've been married for 30 years to my wife, Margot. We have two adult children, and one of which for a while chose she to be a lawyer. So I sent her to law school. She decided to go to Europe. She went to the University of Edinburgh and then decided she didn't want to be a lawyer. Now she's an IT professional, but she lives in Luxembourg. And my other daughter is a primary school teacher here in Hamilton. So that's kind of the background of my life.
Perfect. So thank you, Andrew, for sort of sharing everything there. And now you mentioned you were a bencher for the last 8 years, and why run for the third term here? What's bringing you back to the Law Society's, if elected to the Law Society's bencher position?
Well, several things. I mean, one of the main things I do as a bencher right now is I'm actually chair of Law Pro, and I have been for 4 years. And frankly, I'm very proud of it. I love that job. It's an amazing thing to do. And like I said, I'm very proud of the work we've done there. And so I hope to continue in that role. It's a very important hidden gem that the Law Society provides to its members. It's I like to sort of explain things in kind of simple homespun terms, perhaps. And if you sit down and look at what does the Law Society do in protecting the public, it creates rules for lawyers to operate by, and it enforces those rules. But then it also provides a means by which people can be compensated when lawyers don't necessarily live up to their responsibilities or their duties at any given time. And that's one of the main ways we protect the public. From the Law Society side, we maintain a significant compensation fund for lawyers and paralegals who engage in fraudulent activity in respect of their clients, and we have to pay out claims in that. But the other big one is Law Pro. And Law Pro is a very significant organization, and I said I'm very proud to be associated with it. We defend and pay out claims and indemnify lawyers for liability and for negligence that happens. It costs us about $100 million a year to defend and indemnify on losses. We take in over 3,300 claims a year. Costs about $40,000 on average to resolve those claims. It's a significant enterprise. We retain about 600 lawyers on a regular basis at any given time in our roster to defend clients, defend our folks. And so it's a big undertaking, and I frankly enjoy the challenge of leading it.
Now, Andrew, I mean, from talking to some of your colleagues who were benchers either 8 years ago or two terms ago, and some that were benchers last time. Can you maybe kind of share what the climate was like? I mean, in terms of, what's bringing about the Good Governance Coalition and why you're all running. Perhaps again, for anyone who may not be as aware of the inner workings of convocation, you can sort of share what's been going on and why there may need to be a change this time around.
Yeah. So, like I said, I've been around for 8 years. There was a sea change 4 years ago in terms of the manner in which convocation has been conducted and the behavior of people around the table. And I refer to the time I was a bencher in the first 4 years as the before time, and then there's the after time. In the before time, we would have contentious debates, but I have to say I was very proud to be associated with just about everybody who was around the table. I respected them. They were leaders in the profession, thoughtful people. They came to the table with different ideas and perspectives on things, and it was an environment where people could disagree but not be disagreeable. And that, after the debate was over, we could all get together and talk and respected each other. Since the onset of the stop slate, that tenor has changed. It's very partisan now. It's very much, there's a great deal of suspicion in people's behavior. And frankly, in many ways, there's been quite a few situations where people have done things which I find embarrassing to be associated with, in the sense that I'm sitting at the same table with some of the people doing some of the things that have happened. On the other hand, we have accomplished some good work in the last few years. We've managed to maintain the integrity, keep fees relatively low at the Law Society. We've been able to help people through the pandemic. We've been able to move from the old way of doing things to an online environment, and it's been fairly successful in that sense. But one of the things that people have to keep in mind is, why are we there? We're there to regulate the profession in the public interest, to ensure competence amongst our members, that they're serving the public well, and that promote access to justice. Those are the big three things that the statutory mandate of the Law Society has to honor and pursue. And it's the interesting thing is, it's not about us, it's about the public. It's about the people we serve. And sometimes I think when we hear a lot of the discussion and debate amongst some of my SOP colleagues, it's about what they think is best for us versus what's best for the public. And we have a privilege of self-regulation in Ontario. I think it's very important to have self-regulation. Is a cornerstone of a strong and independent bar, which I think protects civil liberties. And to the extent that you lose that right of self-regulation because you've squandered it, and I think we are at risk of losing it because of some of the behavior that occurs around our table. To the extent that we lose it, I think we lose a significant bulwark that we have in maintaining the independence of the bar as a vehicle for vindicating the rights of individuals across this province. And so I think it's important that we protect it. And the way we protect it is by honoring the seriousness of the undertaking we have. And I think that focusing on what's best for us versus what's best for the clients and what's best for the public is what's going to lose us self-regulation.
Now, I guess look at that in more specifics in terms of the vision of both the Good Governance Coalition, and then maybe some more specifics there. With that experience you have of what would you like to see if elected, and have the opportunity there over the next 4 years in terms of building on things in the public interest.
Yeah, well, one of the things there has to be. Well, the interesting thing about the folks in the Good Governance Coalition, we're purposefully not pursuing any one policy objective other than looking at the issue of trying not to have situations where we have slates anymore. And I have my own thoughts about how that can be achieved. I don't know if they would be the most effective, but put them on the table and start having a debate about it. But it's important to have people who have experience in leadership skills and good judgment at the table to help make those decisions, because we are about to enter what I call our Uber moment. We're on the precipice of huge technological change, which is going to impact how individuals interact with any kind of legal process, how intermediaries, trusted intermediaries like lawyers or paralegals, act on behalf of them or even don't act on behalf of them, how we use technology and project it into any kind of legal service or process that we're acting on behalf of people for. Like, we're going to have things are going to be coming down the pipeline in terms of online dispute resolution platforms. They already exist in British Columbia. How lawyers and paralegals interact with that, with self-represented individuals and interacting with the courts and tribunals through that. We're going to have rule changes and new models of thinking and behavior that are going to have to be developed over time. And it's important in terms of the people who are regulating the profession that they take that job seriously and understand that they may not know everything, they may not understand every aspect of it, but they have to have the humility to dig into it and try and figure a way for everybody, because these things are coming whether we like it or not. How ChatGPT or how online dispute resolution platforms are going to work, and how they integrate with us as legal professionals. They're going to change. They're coming whether we like it or not. We're going to have to adjust to that, and it's going to have huge implications in terms of how we function as those trusted intermediaries in legal process or in forming contracts or relationships on behalf of our clients. So having people at the table who have experience is important, and who actually understand what your role as a fiduciary of the law study, your role as a policymaker is. And also, it's important to remember that the people you're going to be electing could sit in judgment on you, right? I mean, I've sat on the tribunal for 6 of the last 8 years. There were 2 years that I stepped away because I found the amount of work I was doing with Law Pro significant, and I took that time. But then I once I sort of got in the learning curve and figured out Law Pro, I've gone back to doing more adjudication work. But it's important that the people who will be sitting on those tribunals, that you trust their judgment, and that you have some respect for what they are and their background and what they're doing. And so that's always an issue that people should keep in mind. The law site has a very large task to it. Like, for example, every year we take in close to 6,000 complaints, 3,500 to 4,000 of which actually have to be investigated. A lot of them are just like, my lawyer's charging me too much money, and that's a fee dispute is not our thing. But where there's an issue of an allegation of potential professional misconduct, that has to be investigated. And sometimes it's a nothing, sometimes it's something but not too serious, and sometimes it's very serious. And so, having folks who understand the need to devote resources to that and to treat the public appropriately when they lodge these complaints, that's an important aspect of having people at the table. And so having the sense and understanding of what your role is key going forward. And I'm not sure that all of my colleagues who participate on the Stop slate really appreciate the full extent of that obligation.
Now, speaking of slates, I mean, there's a sort of criticism of we don't like how sort of the Stop slate came about and sort of had this vote splitting there from the last election. So we're going to create our own slate, and then if we're elected, we're going to get rid of slates altogether. Kind of, sort of seems sort of contradictory. Perhaps maybe you can kind of look at that or explain sort of what the coalition is and how that all makes sense in the light of everything.
Yeah, it is inherently contradictory. If I had my way, I wouldn't be part of any coalition. I've been elected twice without a coalition. And I'm a regional bencher, which means I was elected because I got the most votes from folks in my region. Okay. And in other law societies across the country, voting structures are different than what we have here. And so, for example, I think in British Columbia, if you live in Victoria, you don't vote for people in Vancouver. You vote for people in your area. And one of the significances of that is that you don't have to engage in these thematic advertising campaigns, and the power of misinformation is nowhere near as strong because people know your reputations. And my own personal view is that law society voting structures should be reformed in such a way that you vote for people who are from your area. It's not that complicated. Whether that's the right thing or not, I don't know. But the coalition has sort of said, okay, we're gonna look at this, and then there may be other models that you can follow. Another thing in terms of governance at the Law Society is that we need to find some way to ensure there's certain skill sets at the table. We've had some very good people who understand finance especially in the lay bencher group that's been appointed by the government. That's not guaranteed depending on who you vote for, right? So having people with strong financial understanding, strong sense of auditing experience or investment experience, because we do manage significant amounts of money on behalf of the profession and for the public. So having those kinds of skill sets at the table guaranteed, it should be something we should think about in terms of governance reform. There have been people who have those skills, there's no doubt, but it's not guaranteed you will have them, right? So coming up with a bit of a modified approach in terms of how we elect and get people onto our governance panel into convocation is something we should seriously think about. In terms of a coalition, my own view is that it's necessary to pull people in who actually present themselves with a constellation of skills and abilities and experiences, and they're not focused on one particular outcome. I think what we're looking to do, and I think everybody in our group would be interested in responsible budgeting, responsible management of the affairs of the Law Society, and honoring and pursuing the statutory mandate, which is protecting the public and ensuring competence for lawyers and paralegals. And beyond that, how you achieve any particular aspect of that is open for debate. And I think that the real issue then is to have an environment where debate is civil and decorum is such that people are able to put their arguments forward and be considered thoughtfully, rather than in a way that's not ideal, put it that way. So.
Now continuing on, I guess now stop's become full stop, and they're running, I think, 35 candidates. Again, from their website, sort of the phrase "stop creep, stop bloat, stop woke" kind of being some of the pillars there. Now, from what you've seen as a bencher over the last 8 years, in terms of maybe responding to that, and if they are elected, what problems could that bring potentially, to the governance of the Law Society, and perhaps you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, the funny thing here is that I've sort of, because of my role in Law Pro, I've done a bit of a survey over what does it actually cost to be a lawyer in private practice in Ontario in terms of your fees and premiums over the last 30 years, since the insurance crisis of the late 80s and early 90s. One of the things in terms of the cost of being a lawyer, if I'm not mistaken, in 1994, the annual fee was $1,211. Okay. It's about the same today, adjusted for inflation, that it has been since then. It really hasn't changed much. It's gone up a little, gone down a little. And this year, your premiums went up. Not your premiums, your fees went up. The largest reason your fees went up this year is because we had a rash of frauds last year, and we know we're going to have to collect money to replenish our compensation fund. We have a statutory obligation to protect the public by reimbursing members of the public who've been defrauded by lawyers. Okay. And so the largest component of the fee increase this year was to replenish that fund because we know we have to pay money out of it. Okay. And so when you look at that aspect about what does it cost, it hasn't changed much in the last 30 years for fees. In terms of insurance premiums, it is cheaper to pay. Your law pro premiums today are cheaper than they were 10 years ago. In insurance, that's unheard of. So in terms of value for money, in terms of providing service, there's talk about creep and bloat. Well, there hasn't been a change, and in fact, it's cheaper now than it used to be. So to the extent that those words are chosen to portray fact, they're not accurate. And so I think when folks are around the bench or table talking, they should be talking using facts and be dispassionate and thoughtful, and not use words like that, which are not accurate.
Now, as chair of Law Pro, and I don't know if this has come up, but I have a couple of the paralegal bencher candidates. For paralegals, they don't use Law Pro. They have, I think they can choose from a couple of options. But has it ever come up of that being something where Law Pro is on the table and open for maybe at different premiums given the different scopes for something that the paralegal licensees would be able to look into it, or have they ever discussed that in the last 8 years as venture?
Right. So that, first of all, that's a convocation decision. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is that when paralegals were first regulated, that was one of the most important aspects. It's like, you want to set rules for them so there's professional standards, but also ensure that there's liability coverage in case there's liabilities. And so when that was set up, paralegals as a group generally did not want to contract into Law Pro, and they went out into the private market. And to a certain extent, the law study regulates the terms of coverage, but they're not as specific as they are with Law Pro. Right now, we do actually insure, Law Pro does insure some paralegals. They are paralegals who are in partnership with lawyers. Okay, so we will extend the insurance to them. There's about 40 to 50 of them in Ontario. Another logical thing would be for paralegals who happen to be employed in law firms with lawyers, because right now a paralegal who does do paralegal work, not just clerk work, but paralegal work, and is going to small claims court or whatever, has to get independent insurance outside the scope of Law Pro. And so it's a bit inconvenient if you're working in a law firm that's where there are lawyer partners and you're an employee to go out and get external insurance. So that's something we're looking at. But then with respect to paralegals themselves who are in private practice and running their own firms, they've generally chosen not to want to go with Law Pro. And so to the extent that unless there's a groundswell and desire on the part of paralegals to do that, we're open to a discussion, clearly. But absent a desire to go in that direction, the general sense is we're not going to force it on anybody. Right? That's kind of the where I think things are right now.
Perfect. So Andrew, last couple questions here. I have students like yourself that are listening, and in terms of getting into the profession, perhaps you share the same kind of advice to your own students, maybe the last class before the final exam. But what words of wisdom do you have as they look to enter into our legal profession?
Well, the profession is going to be in flux in the next while, and one of the challenges is technology. Right, in the sense that here we are on a certain level, you and I are communicating visually and orally. We're talking and seeing each other, but we're not in the same room with each other. And I think that, and as especially litigation where things are going more online, there's less opportunity to see people and watch people engage in advocacy. You have to make an extra special effort to get involved and get engaged, to see other people, be in other people's presences, be with other people. Get involved with your local law association, if you're outside of Toronto, or if you're in Toronto, the TLA, or if you're in a specific practice area, get involved with the OBA in the practice area you're interested in. Get involved with somebody somewhere, because it can be quite lonely if you don't. And one of the things is that law is a social profession. What do? We mediate and moderate and manage relationships between human beings and each other, one human being and another, or human beings and things. And so, if you're engaged in a social profession, it's important to be socially engaged with other people, and you can't just be in your office cranking out documents and not be part of the community. It's important to be part of the legal community. It's been the most rewarding thing I've done as a lawyer. Like I said, I was president of the Hamilton Law Association. It was a great place to meet so many people and learn so many things. And you learn so much just by having informal conversations with people. You just sort of say, hey, what do you think of this? And what do you think of that? You can't have those quiet conversations where you just informally talk about something unless you've built a relationship. And to build a relationship, you have to be with people. And so find environments in which you meet your colleagues and be with your colleagues.
Perfect. So thanks again, Andrew, for taking the time and joining us. Final question here is, why should the lawyers that are listening, including myself, vote for you and vote for the Good Governance Coalition?
Why? Well, I think I bring experience to the table. I think I bring knowledge to the table. In terms of my colleagues in the coalition, they are all people I would have confidence in to legislate on our profession, but also sit in judgment. Hopefully not of me, but if you were before a tribunal, you'd want somebody who has experience, who has the humility to listen and to think and to render the best decision they possibly can after hearing all the evidence. Those are the kinds of people you want at the table. And my sense is that with the coalition, those are the kinds of people you'll get. And I think they will bring honor to the profession and serve us well.
Perfect. So thanks again, once again, Andrew, for joining us, and take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.